In many instances, we forget about farming and what the farmers may be going through. Well, ladies and gentlemen, fields all over California are being left to rot. So this came out in Forbes, April 6, 2020. Americans stuck at home to help curb the spread of CV can't buy enough toilet paper, cleaning supplies, alcohol, but there's plenty of lettuce and leafy greens. In fact, there is so much that the West Coast growers are letting some crops die in the fields. That's because in good times, the majority of lettuce and broccoli are actually sold to restaurants, schools, not supermarkets. This thing has been just like hitting a brick wall, and we don't know how long it's going to last. Larry Cox, owner of Salinas, California based Coastline Family Farms, told Forbes. Normally, at this time of the year, his farm is sprawling across more than 10,000 acres in California, Arizona, and Mexico. Would be sending 120,000 boxes of iceberg lettuce, romaine, green, and red leaf lettuce, broccoli, and cauliflower a week. About 70% of that would be going to food service companies and 30% to supermarkets. We're lucky if we harvest as much as 60% of what we have already and scheduled to harvest the last couple of weeks. And the fate of those unpicked crops were just underlying. We do donate heavily to food banks in all areas we operate in. So a lot of the produce get moved into the community that way. As the number of CV infections and deaths continue to rise, stay at home rules set by US cities and states have had an early and particularly damaging impact on restaurants, which rapidly suspend sit down dining and shift it to takeout and delivery only operations. Likewise, cafeteria operations at school and universities, as well as catering services, have ground to a halt. California is more commonly associated with Hollywood entertainment or Silicon Valley tech, but its farms generate about $50 billion a year from sales of more than 400 crops, the most in the US. Its good weather also allows for a year round growing season, and state supplies more than a third of all vegetables sold in the US and two-thirds of the country's fruits and nuts. CV triggered near complete evaporation of the food service sector, says Corey Lundy, a spokesman for the Western Growers Association in Irvine, California. And like Coastline Cox, many of our members who sell to restaurants, schools, and other food service outlets are simply walking over fields, not harvesting ripe produce because they have no customers. Wow. That's right. They sure wouldn't have any now. Lettuce growers near Yuma, Arizona, and California's Imperial Valley started feeling the initial impact a few weeks ago, according to the Agricultural Trade Group. It's since moved on. The Salinas region, a wildly productive farming area that is known as the Salad Bowl of America. By Cox estimates, his sales to food service companies are currently about a quarter of what's typical for the spring season. But there has been a small pickup in supermarket demand. Food service is operating at about 25%, and retail is operating about 110% of normal. Unfortunately, now we're starting to hear reports of a slowdown in the retail supermarket sector as the early spike in demand has tapered off. Given how much of the crop is going to waste now, Cox says he'll plant less for his next lettuce crop, which would be ready for harvest by midsummer. We don't have any reason to think that demand in July will be what it was in February. We are making cutbacks in our planting on a weekly basis, he said. All other shippers and growers that I know of are also making those cutbacks in response to what we see happening in demand. It's not very wise to anticipate anything going to be back to normal within 60 to 90 days. Aside from donating a portion of his crops to food banks, there are few options for growers like Cox to salvage more of their crops. Export demands to big overseas market, including China, Japan, and South Korea, is also down, as they also deal with CV. And big commercial farms can't easily be opened up to let the public come in to pick their own vegetables. People aren't supposed to come out right now. They're supposed to shelter at home. You'd have to ensure that it's only groups of 10 and that they stay 6 feet apart. These farms aren't close to city centers, and we don't have that big population in these rural areas. Well, he got a point there, but that's a shame. You know, what a waste. What a waste that many of these crops will have to just sit there and rot. Do you know how many people these crops, even all through California, can feed? Wow. You know, when you see stuff like this happening, it is definitely a real thing. No farmer would sit there and go broke if they didn't have to do it. You know, if people are not looking at produce like they did before, then that is a problem for the farmer. And we already know businesses are not going to make much of a profit this year. Very few of them. But y'all, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.